In the 17 years since it first went live from Mark Zuckerberg's Harvard dorm room, Facebook has been no stranger to controversy. But while it started as a site for local college kids batting back lawsuits over who actually founded it, it's since ballooned into a global giant with giant global problems. For years, people have raised concerns over how the platform amplifies misinformation and hate, contributes to serious mental health problems. But newly leaked documents that have come to be known as the Facebook papers are shedding light on what the company has long known and what they have or rather haven't been doing about it. It's all thanks to whistleblower Francishaugen.
The algorithms take people who have very mainstream interests and they push them towards extreme interests. You can be someone center-left and you'll get pushed to radical left. You can be center-right, you'll get pushed to radical right. Unquestionably, it's making hate worse.
It's a concern Facebook employees have apparently been raising for years. And according to NPR, which is among 17 news organizations given access to the documents, it's something employees seized on after the January 6th attack on the Capitol, with one writing on an internal message board, quote, "We've been fueling this fire for a long time, and we shouldn't be surprised it's now out of control." According to CNN, the Facebook papers also highlight gaps in Facebook's ability to prevent hate speech and misinformation in much of the Middle East, where coverage of many local languages is inadequate. And they go on to report Facebook has known about human trafficking using its platforms since at least 2018, but has struggled to crack down on related content. Then, of course, there's the Facebook VIP program, which allowed prominent and influential people to play by different rules than the rest of us. Among them, Donald Trump, who was allowed to stay on the site after repeated violations and was only kicked off after the Capitol riot. Haugen has also testified at length about the negative effects Facebook-owned Instagram has had on young girls, with many both addicted to and hurt by some of the platform's content.
The company's leadership knows how to make Facebook and Instagram safer, but won't make the necessary changes because they have put their astronomical profits before people.
In short, as one employee put it, according to the Wall Street Journal, we are not actually doing what we say we do publicly. I'd say so. And on Monday, Zuckerberg put up a statement saying, in part, these issues aren't primarily about social media. What we're seeing is a coordinated effort to selectively use leaked documents to paint a false picture of our company. I'm joined now by one of Francishaugen's advisors through all this, Harvard Law professor, constitutional scholar, and former presidential candidate, Lawrence Lessig. Larry, thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here, Jim.
We only know Francishaugen from her public face. Tell us a little bit about her.
Well, she almost seems like from Central Casting. I mean, she's, a geek girl from Iowa who decided to go to Silicon Valley because she wanted to take her technical abilities and do something good with them. She joined Facebook after 2016 because she had seen how it had radicalized one of her close friends. And she wanted to work inside that company to make the company produce a platform that would be safer for everybody. And so she was very idealistic. And the striking thing about these papers, if you read them, is how many idealists, how many engineers inside of that company are so committed to doing the right thing.
So many civil libertarians don't like how Mark Zuckerberg does business, but they worry about that regulating speech on Facebook may run afoul of the First Amendment. You appear to think that free speech and reining in the worst of Facebook can coexist. How?
Well, the point is to recognize the problem is not the speech. The problem is the amplification of certain speech. What they do is not just make speech available. They, using their algorithms, decide to amplify some and suppress others. And what they do is to amplify the worst of what we say. And they do that not because they're trying to destroy America. This is not Putin. They're not trying to tilt to the right or to tilt to the left. They do this because human psychology responds, reacts best, or more violently to this politics of hate. And so in their business model, which of course is to addict us as much as they can, the best way to do that is to give us the worst content. And so the solution to that, in my view, is to look at the techniques that Facebook's own engineers have identified for slowing down, more like a speed limit, damping down the craziness of the virality on the platform to make it something more at human speed so that we don't turn out to be the worst of who we are.
So what does that mean? Limiting how much something can be shared? Is it that mundane? Is that what you mean?
Right. I mean, one of the studies inside of these papers is Facebook's own engineers recognizing that if a comment is reshared twice, it is 4 times more likely to have misinformation than any other content. And if it's reshared more than twice, then that number goes up dramatically. And so what they've proposed is just to limit the ability to easily reshare these comments. I mean, you can always take the URL and put it in your own message and then send it out to as many people as you want. But this kind of simple way to facilitate this reshare is what drives the craziness that we see, especially in the context of the political speech that went out of control on January 6th.
Let's talk for a second about Section 230, the Communications Decency Act. That's the thing that prevents platforms for being held liable for content posted by third parties on their sites. In a rare moment, but for different reasons, Presidents Trump and Biden both want it repealed. Is that a good idea?
Repeal is a big word. There needs to be something like 230 inside of the internet to make it so that we can continue to encourage users to post content on the internet. But the premise of 230 was that these platforms would just be places like message boards where people would post comments and the message board can't really be responsible for it. Nobody imagined these extraordinarily sophisticated manipulation machines deciding which content should be elevated and which content suppressed. And so I think in response to this evolving technology, we need to evolve 230 to make it so that these platforms don't have an incentive to spread the worst of this speech and to profit from that spreading. And they're responsible for taking down the harmful speech, such as defamation, at least when they're made clear of it. So it's not going to be simple, but we certainly should not keep what we have or abolish everything in 230.
You know, Larry, I've been paying close attention to the Elizabeth Holmes trial where she's charged with frauding and defrauding investors with her comments about, obviously, her blood testing company. And I want to talk about not regulation of Facebook, but what I'll call regulation of Zuckerberg. It seems to me that Zuckerberg is Elizabeth Holmes writ large. I mean, his public pronouncements about what his company does about harmful content are directly contradicted by what your client, or whatever we want to call her, Francishaugen, and in other internal documents disclose. Does he have potential serious criminal liability here? She could do 20 years in prison, by the way.
Well, I doubt he faces criminal liability, although there's an SEC action, many SEC actions now that are saying that they misled their investors. And I completely agree that he has been very careful in crafting his statements to mislead the public in fundamental ways. I wouldn't equate him to Holmes because, of course, he has built something extraordinarily powerful and effective, unlike Holmes, who everything she was building was a fraud. But there is something about the way the company is structured that I think we should be very worried about. And that is the fact that that man, sitting on top of $1 trillion company, which touches the lives of 3 billion people every single month, that man, every decision he makes is a decision that cannot be overturned by anybody else in the company. He has a controlling share, a controlling ownership of the shares in that company. And that is unprecedented. We have not had a publicly traded company of this size where one person is basically unreviewable by anybody inside the company. And so if you want to talk about a simple thing to do tomorrow, it would be for Congress to act to make that not allowed, so that at least the company could behave like every other publicly traded company and begin to work out its problems according to the standards of a public company, as opposed to the ego of one particular person who's focused exclusively, it seems, on growth over everything else.
Which, before you go, gives me an opportunity to play one of my favorite sound bites from Congress of recent years. 2018, Senator Hatch and Mark Zuckerberg. Here it is.
How do you sustain a business model in which users don't pay for your service?
Senator, we run ads.
Does that not cause you to worry that Congress doesn't have what it takes to regulate this business in any fashion, Larry Lessig?
It terrifies me, but I don't think Senator Hatch is a measure of Congress. I think the real problem to Congress is a problem, Jim, you and I have talked about a million times. It's a deeply corrupted and broken institution. There are a lot of decent, smart people inside it who are focusing on the right problems and trying to get to the right answers. And it's cross-partisan. You know, the hearing that Francis participated in had just as many Republicans standing up to say this is a problem as Democrats. But I think the real problem is, even if they come up with good solutions, which many of them are talking about good solutions, the brokenness of this system means it's almost impossible to imagine Congress adopting them because of the many places where money, and especially Silicon Valley money, can step in and block real reform.
Hope you're wrong, Larry Lessig. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Jim.